The first thing Armin noticed was the sound of someone breaking quietly. Not loudly, not dramatically, but the kind of silent shattering that happens when a person has already cried too much and has nothing left except breath and disbelief. It was late morning, sunlight spilling through the cafe windows like forgiveness, when he saw her sitting alone near the corner table, shoulders hunched, hands wrapped around a cup she hadn't touched. In that moment, before logic or caution could step in, Armin felt a strange pull in his chest, the kind that comes when two wounded lives cross paths at exactly the wrong and right time. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and small moments that change everything, take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Shadowverse. Your support helps these stories reach hearts that need them. Armin was not a man who usually noticed other people's pain. Not because he lacked empathy, but because his own life had trained him to keep moving, head down, eyes forward. At 37, he was a single father of a 6-year-old boy named Zion, juggling deadlines at a logistics firm and school pickup times with the precision of someone who knew what happened when you dropped even one ball. His wife had died 3 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving behind an apartment that still smelled faintly of her shampoo and a child who asked questions Armin still didn't know how to answer. Every morning, he woke up before sunrise, packed lunches, tied shoelaces, and rehearsed strength in the mirror because that was what survival demanded. The cafe had become his quiet refuge after dropping Zion at school. A place to sit for 15 minutes before work, to breathe without being needed, to exist as more than a father or an employee. That morning felt ordinary until it didn't. When Armin's eyes adjusted, he recognized the woman crying. Her name was Mare Noor, someone from the finance department 2 floors above his. They exchanged polite nods at work, the kind that carried no weight, no curiosity. Seeing her like this felt like discovering a crack in a wall you thought was solid. Mare was known at the office as composed, efficient, almost intimidating in her calm. Her hair was always neatly tied, her reports flawless. No one ever saw her late or flustered. But here, in daylight, in a public place, she looked smaller, undone, as if the world had finally caught up with her. Armin hesitated. He told himself it wasn't his place. He reminded himself of meetings, of responsibility, of boundaries. Still, his feet carried him forward. He ordered his coffee, then sat 2 tables away, not staring, not intruding. He told himself that was enough. But when Mare's shoulders shook again and she pressed her forehead into her hands, something inside Armin cracked open, the same place that had broken the night he realized he would have to raise a child alone. He remembered how invisible his grief had felt back then, how people had assumed he was coping because he showed up. He knew that kind of loneliness. Armin moved to her table slowly, carefully, like approaching a frightened animal. He didn't ask questions or demand explanations. He simply acknowledged her presence, her pain, as if it were something allowed to exist. What he said was not poetic or rehearsed. It wasn't advice or comfort packaged neatly. It was a truth pulled straight from the mess of his own life. He told her that sometimes the strongest people are the ones who finally get tired of being strong, and that it doesn't mean they are failing, it means they are human. Mare looked up then, eyes red, startled more by being seen than by his words. Something in her expression shifted, not fixed, not healed, but softened. The dam didn't burst. Instead, the tears slowed, as if they had been given permission to stop. Armin didn't stay long. He didn't hover or push. He left after a few minutes, carrying his coffee and a strange heaviness mixed with lightness in his chest, unaware that something irreversible had just begun. For the rest of the day, Armin found himself distracted. Numbers blurred, emails went unread. He kept replaying the moment, wondering if he'd crossed a line or said too much. Yet beneath the worry was a quiet sense of rightness. That evening, when he picked up Zion and listened to him talk about a school project with wild enthusiasm, Armin felt more present than usual. As if offering kindness had reconnected him to something he'd been missing. Mare, on the other hand, went home and sat in her car long after turning off the engine. Her life, from the outside, looked successful. A stable job, financial independence, respect. But beneath it was a long history of being the responsible one, the eldest daughter, the fixer. Recently, everything had collapsed at once. Her mother's health was failing, her engagement had ended after years of emotional neglect, and she'd been denied a promotion she'd sacrificed nights and weekends for. That morning at the cafe had been the first time the wait became unbearable. Armin's words echoed in her mind all day. Not because they solved anything, but because they named something she'd never allowed herself to admit. She was tired. And for the first time, she didn't feel ashamed of that fact. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed more often. In elevators, during lunch breaks, in the quiet moments before meetings started. They didn't suddenly become close. There were no dramatic confessions or forced conversations. Just small acknowledgments, shared smiles, a growing sense of familiarity. One afternoon, Mare left a note on Armin's desk, thanking him for that morning, saying she hadn't known how much she needed to hear that she was allowed to be human. Armin kept the note folded in his wallet for days. It felt strange how something so small could feel so heavy with meaning. He didn't respond right away, unsure of what to say. His life was already full of responsibility and caution. Letting someone new matter felt risky. Still, something in Mare's honesty felt safe. Their connection deepened slowly, rooted in shared understanding rather than romance. Mare learned about Zion, about bedtime stories and school lunches, about the fear Armin carried of not being enough. Armin learned about Mare's family, her sense of duty, the way she'd built walls so high she forgot how to ask for help. They met occasionally at the same cafe, always during the day, sunlight tracing patterns on the tables as if blessing their conversations. What changed both their lives wasn't a grand gesture but a shift in how they saw themselves. Mare began setting boundaries at work, turning down extra tasks that drained her. She started visiting her mother without guilt, accepting that she couldn't fix everything. Armin, inspired by her courage, finally applied for a flexible role he'd been afraid to ask for, allowing him more time with his son. They became mirrors for each other, reflecting back strength where the other only saw weakness. There were setbacks, of course. Days when Mare retreated into old habits, when Armin felt the familiar ache of grief resurface. But now, they didn't face those moments alone. They had learned that sharing pain didn't make it heavier, it made it bearable. One bright afternoon, months after that first cafe encounter, Armin watched Mare laugh with Zion over spilled juice and mismatched straws. The sound filled the space between them, warm and unexpected. He realized then that life hadn't returned to what it once was, it had become something new. Not perfect, not easy, but honest. Near the end of that day, as they sat quietly, Armin felt a gratitude so deep it surprised him. Not just for Mare, but for the version of himself who had chosen to speak instead of walking away that morning. One sentence, offered without expectation, had shifted two lives onto a different path. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, comment, and share it. Your engagement tells us these stories matter and helps them reach someone who might need hope today. Special request: comment below and tell us which moment in the story stayed with you the most. As the sun dipped lower and the cafe filled with soft afternoon light, Armin understood something he wished he'd known years ago. Kindness doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it sits across from you with trembling hands, waiting for a single, honest moment. And sometimes, when you choose to meet it, both lives are changed forever.